What do you think about a Kiwami 3, Froob?
Oh boy.
How's it going, people? Welcome to yet another podcast. Today's guest is a Yakuza Speedrunner who I've gotten to know, thankfully, over the last few months to a year, give or take. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you. I'm Froob. As Valian said, I am a Yakuza speedrunner. I've been playing these games since the original Yakuza 1 came out on the PS2, but I've been speedrunning them for 7 years now. I have done more recently a lot of runs for GDQ, and next month, which will be January 2024, I'll be doing Kaito Files at GDQ. So, yeah.
That's awesome. The world of speedrunning has been, you could say, possibly foreign for like a long time for me, until like a few years ago. Like I would see speedruns here and there from other people, but I never really watched any of them again until a few years ago. And you know, the thought that goes into them has always been something that I didn't think much about. Until I saw actually like people do the speedruns, and yeah, it's always insane to me just how much thought, how much routing, how much technique goes into all of that. So I only have like the highest respect for you guys. Good job with that.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Right, so wait, you didn't mention your favorite games, did you?
No, I didn't.
Okay,
No.
so what's your favorite Yakuza games then?
It's funny because I obviously get asked this a lot, and my casual list is different to my speedrun list. So for a quick and dirty rundown, for the speedrun list, it would be LAD, Kiwami 2, probably Judgment, but it depends mostly on how I'm feeling at the time. Casually, the way that I usually break it down is via the engines, and if it's the oldest engine, aka the PS2 one, it'd be OG2. If it'd be the pre-Dragon engine, it would be either 5 or 0, and for Dragon engine, LAD or Lost Judgment. But if I had to force myself to pick like one, it would be between either 0 or 5.
0 or 5. So that's your own personal preference.
Yes.
Right. You know, it's also really interesting to me how the speedrun can affect what games you enjoy to run, because, well, I'm sure you know more about this than I do.
Yeah, it's interesting because every Yakuza speedrun is like wildly different in like the strats and stuff, and some games, and this is just in general for speedrunning, not just Yakuza stuff, some games can be fun to play casually and just not make a good speedrun. Unironically, a good example of that is Fist of the North Star. Fist of the North Star, I actually really like it casually, but like, man, the speedrun just puts to the forefront all the time wasting that Fist of the North Star does, and just you get these little bits in the speedrun where it's like 15 to 20 minutes of just walk around, drive in the wasteland, and like, unfortunately we can't skip that. So it's like, you know, as fun as like, you know, constant action is in a speedrun, you have the nice thing about the Yaks games is you do have your nice bits of downtime to just chill.
God, as soon as he said Lost Paradise, I was like, okay, I know exactly what he means. Like, honestly, that game, unfortunately, even casually, is, like, once you get into the meat of things and, like, you get to know exactly how grindy that game is, it's just, it's painful. It's painful.
Yeah. I did all sub-stories recently.
Go on.
I was gonna say, I did all sub-stories recently, and all sub-stories took me 16 and a half hours, of which I'm fairly confident 7 of those hours were just cabaret.
I believe.
And that's a shame, because I like that cabaret. I like that it's different. But
so,
too much.
Just to put things into perspective, doing all sub-stories, a speedrun of all sub-stories with other games, how long do some other games take you compared to Lost Paradise?
For reference, we can get very short ones or very long ones. For speedrunning, we always consider Kiwami 2 to be the king of short because everything in K2 is short. Until Gaiden came along, it was the shortest any percent, not counting Majima Saga. But K2 all sub-stories is about 6 hours. for like a comparison to how Fist and All-Star is. You'd think that Yakuza 5 would be quite long. Yakuza 5 is only about 10.5 hours. Like, it's surprising how quick it is,
Wow.
because Yakuza 5's any percent portion, which is also obviously part of all sub-stories, is 6 hours. So you just do the sub-stories on top of that, and yeah, it just doesn't add that much. It's surprising how quick it is. So
that is pretty surprising. Yeah, I would have expected for it to be like, you know, just around Lost Paradise's length. But
Yep.
I mean, I'm sure you're thankful for that as a speedrunner.
Yeah, it all depends on the side content. And this is going to sound weird after what I've said with like K2 and Fist of the North Star. The reason why Fist of the North Star is so long is because of that side content we were talking about. Lynn's shop, cabaret, Bartender Ken. But the Bartender Ken's actually not too bad in the run. It's only about 30 minutes, which is actually kind of nice. But then you've got K2 on the other hand, which also requires the cabaret to do for obviously, you know, the all sub-stories, because every cabaret girl has a sub-story. But it's one of those things where Fist and All-Stars Cabaret, we're doing it to pay off that 100 million yen. It's the quickest and the easiest way by far. Whereas K2, you just have to do all the conversations. To add into the mix Zero's Cabaret and like the nice quality of life things that RGG do between their games, which I'm sure obviously everyone's well aware of. You have Zero's Cabaret where you can only talk to one hostess every single round, which means you have to do Zero's Cabaret a minimum of 36 times because 6 hostesses,
Oh my
and
god.
6 conversations. And K2, you can talk to multiple hostesses at the same time. So K2, I think the cabaret for K2, I think we can do it like as quick as like 13, 14 rounds. It's so much nicer. Like it's just good quality of life stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure like when it comes to tedium, some games are definitely worse than others with all of that.
There's a lot of all sub stories that we haven't touched yet. I think we're all very scared of Yakuza 3.
Yeah, I'm sure some people in the comments will relate to that too. So, would you say Yakuza 3 speedrun is among the least favorite ones of yours?
Funnily enough, I actually really like Yakuza 3 speedrun. Yakuza 3 speedrun, the any percent at least, because we haven't done all sub stories. The any percent for Yakuza 3, we actually it's kind of weird. This is like something that has like shown between the older games and the newer games. The way the speedruns go differs depending on which game it is. For Free's gone through a whole bunch of route changes over the years, and it's fantastic. But Free is like a run of 2 halves. The first half, you basically do like combat and stuff. There's a lot of gut punching, because gut punching in Free is obviously like very, very strong. But we also make use of bounding, which is what Yakuza 3 wants you to do to bounce enemies off of walls and stuff.
Right.
And then in the last third of Yakuza 3's run, we buy 13 illegal guns and shoot everything. We are very, very strong at that point. But actually, like, Free's run is very, very nice. Free's run is one of the last few runs that does have unfortunate RNG. 2/3 of the way through Free's run to be able to buy those guns, we have to go gambling. So we do blackjack because it's very easy to get the 2 blackjack amulets in the run. And the issue with blackjack and the way that blackjack works in Yakuza 3, obviously the amulets work for 5 turns. You use the amulet, you do your 5 turns. On the 6th turn, we want to use the second amulet. From the 6th turn onwards up until the 12th turn, you are guaranteed in one of those turns to get high stakes. If high stakes appears on turn 6, you can't use the amulet, which means you have to win the bet legit. And if you don't win the high stakes legit, run's over. And that's about an hour and a half into the run.
I can't stress this enough, but it always boggles me just how much thought goes into speedrunning. Like when you start hitting that time split, you just have to keep moving. You can't really stop and think much. And I'm assuming like trying to get into the thought process of just how to think while speedrunning is a whole practice on its own, and like it takes a while to actually perfect. Which again, just props to all speedrunners for that.
Yeah, it's like we always say, your first speed run is never good. Like a good example that I always use, my first LAD speed run was 7.5 hours. The run is now sub 3 hour 50 minutes. Like your first run is never ever going to be great, even if there's an established route. Like you just have to try it, and then that second run is always the sweet spot because you've got one run that you've already done. You're used to it now, and then you've seen the improvements, and literally like every single speedrun, your second run, you save like 20, 30 minutes. It's fantastic.
That is a big time, yeah. So, Speaking of speedrunning, how many times have you been to GDQ so far?
It's weird because the first time I was accepted to GDQ was unfortunately during obviously the COVID era. The first time I was accepted was summer 2020 with Kiwami 2. Then January 2021 I was accepted with Yakuza 6.
Mm-hmm.
January 2022 I believe it was Lost Judgment. Summer 2022 last year I went in person for the first time, and that was Yakuza Like a Dragon.
Mm-hmm.
Then I did Attack on Titan, this SGDQ, but that was at home. And then this January, I'll be going actually to Pittsburgh to do Kite Files.
Awesome, awesome. I forgot to mention this, but for those who don't know, GDQ is like a, let's say would you call it a show or convention? Of
I'd
like,
say more of a show.
right, a show where speedrunners gather and they basically speedrun the games that they want to offer to the show. And it's if you think speedrunning on your own is stressful enough, try to speedrun in front of people. I don't know. I feel like that does add to the stress, at least for some people.
Yeah, because the funny thing is, like, going from like doing runs online, like even my first online run, like, you know, just being in this room was still scary. It was like for the first 5 minutes, it was like, you know, oh, there's only like 70,000 people watching right now. It's just okay, cool. You get used to that quite quickly. For last year's SGDQ, doing it in person was so different. There was like an actual like high energy in the room. It was fantastic. I'd only gotten 2 hours sleep as well, so I didn't have nerves. I was just don't fall asleep. Don't fall asleep.
I swear to God, every time I hear about a speedrunner going to GTQ, it's like on very low sleep.
I'd actually slept for the entire week beforehand, but there were a couple of issues that I had with noise from a different room the night of my the night before my run, and just the weird thing is going over to America, like I hadn't realized like things were like massively different. Like I needed some quick breakfast, so I went down to the hotel lobby, and they had like tubs of like these cereals called Cheerios, and we have them in the UK as well. But in the UK, our normal original flavored Cheerios have like a slight honey coating to it, whereas in America, they don't. So I bought the basic Cheerios in a tub, and they were the most driest, awful thing I think I've ever had. And the worst thing is they didn't even have a spoon. So a friend came over, saw me with a cup of Cheerios in one hand, just scooping it up and eating it. I'm just like, just this is my preparation. It's fine.
Yeah, I can only imagine. So that was your first time in the States then, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Man, I'm sure there's a lot to adjust to when you're actually going to a different place for speedrunning, and just, you know, props to you for doing all of that. I'm sure it takes just a lot of work, motivation, and all of that.
Yeah, I have a weird anecdote with the GDQ run that I did for LAD. The PCs at GDQ were too good. So when we got to Sawashiro, and it's in the actual VOD because I say it out loud. When I went to GDQ, they have practice machines which have the same specs as the machines that you run on. And every time I did a run of LAD on the practice machines, the Sawashiro fight in Chapter 13, Sawashiro, the way the fight's supposed to happen in the run is you're on like this wall at the back and Sawashiro's over here. We do specific moves to keep Sawashiro over here so that he doesn't hit us in his first phase. Except for the fact that with the GDQ PCs being so good, all my party members decided, hey, let's go hug Sawashiro. Which meant that every attack he did hit me when it's not supposed to. So I had to come up with new skill, like new strats on the fly whilst I was there. And then on the day, he behaved completely normally. So I have no idea what happened.
Man, like, God, I can only imagine, like, practicing for a specific thing, and then when push comes to shove, you get completely different stuff. I can only imagine the stress. So the solution he came up with, was it good enough, would you say?
It was, for what I had to do. Essentially what I was going to do was I was going to tank a couple more, hits and then just do more healing, and then do a kind of fresh, go over to the food truck at the top right in the park, get some more ingredients, make some more bentos, bar, survive, and then just carry on with the rest of the run. Which thankfully didn't have to come down to that. But yeah, that was the backup plan. More healing.
Let me ask you this: do you think, in your opinion, there is like a a perfect, flawless game combat-wise, or at least what's your favorite game combat-wise?
If I was pushed to it, I would once again say 0 or 5. I don't think there is any one game in the series that has absolutely flawless perfect combat. I think that there is always going to be, like, you know, good things and bad things to the combat in every single game. It's just obviously like how each game approaches it. But
Right.
like in terms of the brawler stuff, I would definitely say 0 or 5 for me personally.
Right. So what would you say you like most about either 0 or 5's combat?
The things for 0, the things I like about 0 is the fact that yes, there are styles that are absolutely busted. For like Kiryu, it's obviously Beast. For Majima, it's Brawler. But Brawler? No, Breaker. That's the
Breaker?
one. Breaker.
Right.
Yeah, that's the one. The actual dancing one, the cool one. But the nice thing is, like, even with those two being like massively overpowered, all of the different styles feel sufficiently different enough and aren't completely overshadowed by the other styles. Whereas, like, in some games that have styles or, you know, different playable characters, there are some that are just, like, completely overshadowed by others. And I think that with Yakuza 5 as well, I feel like for me, that Yakuza 5 Kiryu, I feel like for me is, like, the best feeling Kiryu in that engine. Like, me personally. And then I just feel like Saejima got upgrades from Yakuza 4. Akiyama did, but I kind of feel like I like Akiyama a bit more in Yakuza 4.
Same.
Shinada, I actually quite like Shinada. I didn't like Shinada when I was playing casually, but when we started to do speed tech for Shinada in 5, and I started like actually exploring his moveset, my explosive finish and stuff like that, like actually properly, Shinada actually felt really good. So
that's
yeah.
actually a surprise because playing casually or just playing, you know, non-speedrun, I always felt like Shinada struggled a little bit with crowd control.
Yeah, he definitely does still. Oh yeah.
Right. So what do you use for the speedrun with Shinada then?
With Shinada, unironically, with Shinada, we get the least amount of upgrades on him. We actually get my explosive finished and Boozer's Law for, you know, the drunk benefits, which is also weird if you consider he has no money. The way we get money is also interesting.
Right.
But we have this loop. It's an infinite loop. It's really hard to pull off, where you essentially do like my explosive finish with a light, strong grab, and then I think I've seen you do it actually in a couple of videos where you can get up behind like their like left or right shoulder, depending on which like kind of boss you're fighting. Get out the pipe, do like the heat move, and then get behind them and do the light, strong grab again, and you can just loop them continuously like that.
I
And
see.
the timing of that is really hard depending on who you're fighting.
Right, yeah. It's actually kind of refreshing to see that even in speedruns that square, triangle, circle move is still relevant.
Yeah, I think for me, Shinada is very much like Tanamura in that he gets more fun the more you unlock for him specifically. Like,
we talked about the combat of 0 and 5, but I'm actually curious to see what you think of almost every single combat iteration. So
yeah,
try to say your opinion in like a sentence, if possible. If not,
yeah,
you can talk more about it. It's fine.
yeah.
So we want your opinion on every single iteration of Yakuza Combat. Let's start with OG 1 and 2. What do you think of those?
Sure. And I'm gonna try and do this like in casual terms, not speedrun terms. OG1 stiff because no directional like movement in combat until you do Kamaki training. OG2 has that from the start and feels so much nicer because of that. OG2 feels like a lot more quality of life over what OG1 is, and just feels like a more complete OG1.
3 and 4.
I like free. I'm someone that does like free. I like what free wants you to do, but I understand why people dislike it because it's very different. I like bouncing enemies into walls, but I do like with 4 that you can finally hit enemies on the floor with like combo attacks and bikes and weapons and stuff like that.
And what about, well, you pretty much said this one, but what about 5? If you had to say something about it in a sentence.
Yeah, most complete movesets for pretty much most characters.
Alright, that's a solid statement. What about 0 and Kiwami? If you had to, well, you can comment on them separately, but I just put those in one because they're kind of close to each other in release order.
Yes, yeah.
And, you know.
Yeah, we do that with the speedrun stuff as well, actually.
Oh, I see.
0, most satisfying between all styles.
Huh.
K1, enjoyable, but I also feel with K1 there's a lot of fluff. As a brief example, I feel like the Kiwami essences should have been, by default, a part of Kiryu.
I agree with that. I you probably have a good idea of this, but the amount of people that I've seen, like years ago, just commenting on my random videos, like, "Oh, how do you do the finishers? I don't have these," or like,
Yep.
I had these, but then they didn't work." Is like the amount of times I've seen that is just incredible. And they don't tell you about it. Like you get taught about the finisher system, and then they're like, "Oh, here is your first boss," which, by the way, is, I think, compared to other games, is a pretty steep wall. Like,
Yep.
the amount of people I've also seen quitting at Shimano is not a small amount. So yeah,
I don't understand why they gave him massive HP regen. I think that fight would have been fine even with Shakedown's moveset if he just didn't have the massive HP regen. Like, that was just a bad decision.
I think if he also had like one HP bar like the original, it might have made it a bit simpler. But
yeah, I agree with that.
Like, how do I say this? In a way, as someone who played multiple Yakuza games and pretty much know my way around games, I didn't really mind it. I just saw it as a bit of a challenge at first until I got used to it. Yeah. So, what would you think of 6/Kiwami 2 then?
6, unfortunate, but I enjoy it because with 6, it asks you to do things that most other Yakuza games don't. Throwing enemies and throwing objects is actually a very viable solution, and I like that a lot. K2, I'm gonna get some flack for this. I think K2 is bad as a brawler game. I think it's good as a weapon-based game.
I think you have to use weapons in the speedrun, basically, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. They're stupidly overpowered.
Right. I think
so
I
a bit
agree
of
with
speedrun
you.
bias might be filling in there.
No, I think I actually agree with you. The combat in Kiwami 2 is a bit rough around the edges. And I don't know what it is, but I think I'm more comfortable with the combat of 6 than Kiwami 2, funnily enough. Maybe
I'd agree with that.
Maybe it's the dropkick. I don't know. It just
the dash attack is ridiculous.
It is. I'm almost sad they didn't bring the dropkick in Gaiden, but I can see why they didn't.
Yep.
You could probably just end every single fight with it.
Funnily enough, one of the speedrun routes for Gaiden was the heat attack where you just run into them, then do the strong attack into the heat attack. For a while, that was the strat.
So what do you think about the Judgment games?
Adore them. Love them. Really love the juggling in them. Really love the styles in them. Love the style swapping. I think that Lost Judgment does a good quality of life stuff and fixes a lot of the issues with early Judgment combat in terms of being too slow, flinching off enemies and stuff like that. Not sure I'm fully down with the whole like damage reduction when an enemy is in the sky for too long, but that is kind of a good way to balance the whole fact that Lost Judgment just allowing you to change at any point instead of the apex of your combo is just really good. It's so stylish. It's so good.
Agreed. Absolutely, yes. What about Ishin/Kenzan?
All right, I'm going to go in order. So OG Kenzan. I don't know why I said OG Kenzan. There is only Kenzan.
It's okay.
It's so rough these days. I would say Kenzan has aged worse than 1, but at the same time, I adore Kenzan's fighting. It's like the first style swapping of the series. It's very different level up wise. Like you get predetermined, like, you know, health, speed, power. But the way the actual combat is even though you have like very like tankish movement in battles, there's a free flowingness to it thanks to like the dual sword style that just I really like. It's got heart. I like it.
What about
Ishin? Yeah. Ugh. I prefer OG Ishin over LAD Ishin, which might be a bit controversial.
No, I think a lot of people would agree with you, actually. Like, most of the time when I see talk about Ishin, people bring up the fact that in original Ishin things flowed better.
Yeah, that's
Um,
the exact words I had in mind. Yeah, it's weird because there's certain combos in OG Ishin, like the sword styles, like I think 4 light strong that sometimes misses, that doesn't miss as much in LAD Ishin. There's
mhm,
definitely like some like quality of life stuff in LAD Ishin
uh-huh.
that benefits it. And I don't dislike the card system. I know a lot of people dislike the card system for LAD Ishin. I actually think it does add depth, but I think, and this is a problem that I have with most of the remakes in the series, with the added elements, I think it breaks the older elements. I think Wild Dancer in Lad Ishin is worse than OG Ishin, for instance, and I feel like there's not as much use for it, and I think it's a shame.
No, I think I see what you mean. Um, would you? So there was a big talk about Lad Ishin and the hyper armor aspect of it. They definitely did increase that in
Yeah,
Lad, didn't they?
100%. Yeah, I oh I got very mad at LAD Ishin. And I'm sure you're obviously going to feel the same and be aware. When you get to, I believe it's chapter 7 with Toranosuke, and you get to that one room, which in the original had 2 normal enemies. Completely fine, they were really aggressive. When you get to that room in LAD Ishin, you've got the 2 enemies, they're no longer aggressive because there's a third enemy in there that wasn't in OG Ishin. The big giant enemy that actually throws the like ranged attacks and has the giant like
Uh-huh.
hammer or whatever.
Hmm.
I've never seen RGG specifically nerf an enemy in any of their games, yet they nerfed that one in and like said about it in patch notes. And I'm just like, this enemy is not good. Like, I hated that enemy with a passion.
For
Like,
some
so
reason,
much.
for some reason, the design in, well, I was gonna say both Asian games, but Lad Asian in particular, some of the stuff really reminds me of the Lost Paradise combat in terms of like how frustrating it can be. Like I don't know how to put it.
Yeah. I
Um,
can see that. Because like Lost Paradise has, obviously, as you're saying, when you attack like some of the larger enemies, like they just flash because they have the hyper armor and they just break through whatever you're doing and just knock you down.
mhm.
And it feels like that is like you're saying in like Lad Ishin as well. Like it
Yeah,
felt like
yeah,
there's more of that in Lad Ishin than there is OG Ishin.
yeah, yeah. Um, right. I'm kind of afraid of deviating a little too much, so let's move on to Dead Souls. What do you think of Dead Souls? I'm actually curious myself.
I love Yakuza Dead Souls.
Oh.
Unironically, I love Yakuza Dead Souls. When I played it
Nice.
casually, I really disliked it, and I
Uh-huh.
was somebody that was like, oh, I hate how this is like, pushed 5 aside. But in my maturity, and unironically in speedrunning it, I've actually found a big love for Yakuza Dead Souls and some of the things it does in the background. Some of the things it actually does in the background are really clever. I really like Yakuza Dead Souls. I don't
Nice.
like speedrunning because it keeps crashing even on
Oh,
PS3,
oh,
but
yes,
I
yes.
love Dead Souls.
That's awesome. So, how do I frame this question? How long would you say it took you to appreciate the game? Is it like when you uh, got to a certain point with speedrunning it, or how would you
Yeah,
describe it?
so funnily enough, most people think that I started Yakuza speedrunning with either like 0 or 1.
Hmm.
The first Yakuza game I ever speedran was Yakuza Dead Souls.
Oh,
I did it
okay.
for a specific marathon that was about shooting games. And at the time my PC was breaking, so I was just like, all right, I'm gonna like speed up my like ideas because I did want to do like Yakuza speedruns eventually.
Hmm.
So I sped up and I was just like, all right, I can get Dead Souls out of the door because I did Dead
Hmm.
Souls New Game Plus with the satellite laser,
Hmm.
which a very very easy run because you've got the satellite laser. You chew through everything and you get through it as fast as possible. And I
Hmm.
think unironically that mindset started to help me towards Yakuza Dead Souls, like understanding it because it was like, oh, I'm getting through this as fast as possible. When I played it casually, I do it for like 10 hours a day with no breaks, and that's just I don't think that's good. Um,
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
think Yakuza Dead Souls is like perfect.
Hmm.
I don't like trying to like when you're playing the game casually. I don't like the fact that I love the fact the map changes up. I think that's one of the best parts of Yakuza Dead Souls, and I
Hmm.
also think it's one of the worst part of Yakuza Dead Souls.
Hmm.
Like if you want to go and do the side content, having to go into the quarantine or the infected zone and having to go and find the shop, liberate the shop, go inside the shop, I think that's like just go play another Yakuza game.
Hmm.
But I do like the fact that they are brave enough to keep changing up the map throughout the game. Like There's a
Right.
dynamic feeling to Dead Souls that I just like what it does. And like even the gunplay, yeah, even at the time the controls were predated, and the fact that we got binary domain in the West first didn't help because RGG learned so much from that.
Mm-hmm.
But there's something about it that's satisfying. I can't put my finger on what it is still to this day, but there is something satisfying about it.
Yeah, can't argue with that. So, yes to a Dead Souls remaster then?
Yes, absolutely. 100%. 100%.
Nice, nice. All right. Lost Paradise. What do you think of the Lost Paradise combat?
I want you to know I'm screaming internally right now. For
I'm
as much
sorry.
as I like moan and complain about Lost Paradise,
Uh-huh.
I do like its combat. I think it's got some good ideas. I think going from Dragon Engine 6 to older engine Fist of the North Star was a very good idea.
Mhm.
I kind of feel like Lost Paradise really wants you to do like Lost Paradise really shines with the boss fights. I think the boss fights are some of RGG's best, some of
Mhm.
their most unique. I think that one-on-one combat is really good. There are ways to deal with group combat, but I don't like the way Kenshiro snaps onto like a single character.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
but I do actually like the fact that with Lost Paradise, it was very much a game that started like the future juggling aspect of like a lot of RGG games, like the
That is,
Judgment
yeah,
games.
yeah, that is true. Um, yeah, I also enjoy the Lost Paradise combat. Even, I don't know if I should compare this to Dead Souls in terms of, the game has its faults, but
Yeah.
also there's definitely very good aspects about the game, like the combat. I do enjoy the combat. It could work a little bit on the tedium, but I love the game still.
Yeah.
All right, what about Kurohyou? Have you played the Kurohyou games yet?
I have. I own them. I own them physically.
Ooh,
Unironically, I keep bringing them out, and I keep saying like these are the last two that I haven't actually speedran yet. I need to do that at some point.
oh man.
Um, I like them. They're different. Like it's kind of the same as Kenzan,
Huh.
in the yeah. I have issues with them, especially when the games get later and later because enemies take so long to actually take care of. But
Mhm.
just the whole like having it be a bit more focused one-on-one, having like the different like head part, chest part, etc., etc. Like
Mhm.
you have all these different like elements that just kind of work really well. Like it's not like they weren't supposed to be like the other RGG games, and like
Mhm.
awkward controls in certain things aside, like I think there's a bit of awkward controlness in like Kurohyou 1 for certain things, like grabbing weapons and stuff.
Uh-huh.
Like other than that, I like them for trying something different. I don't like them for their QTEs.
Same. The QTEs, and then for me personally, the street fights in the second game, I don't like them at all.
That's fair. Yeah.
I'm talking about X-Hard though. I mean, X-Hard
Yeah.
is just a pain in some of the games.
Yep. Yeah.
But yeah, did I forget a game, or is that everything? I think that's
I
everything.
think that's everything. Yeah.
Right. Well, I guess we can start talking about some of the really specific mechanics now that we wanted to talk about today. So, let's actually start with what you wanted to talk about, the segmented chunks.
Sure. It's really weird. So when I started speedrunning Gaiden, I started realizing with Gaiden's set pieces specifically that every single fight was broken up constantly. And I think the example that I used for this, or that I started thinking of this, was during the castle segment, when obviously you take over the castle.
Mhm.
The issue that I had is that every fight was just broken up. Like there wasn't like one continual, fight to fight to fight to fight, like there was with say the finale of Zero on like Majima's side, for example.
Uh-huh.
But it's hard for me to like actually like describe this because it's like I feel like RGG have kind of forgotten how to just free flow their set pieces. But the more I think about it, the more all the games did this. So I don't know why Gaiden has started to make me think that like every time they get into a set piece, it's just broken up completely. Like in the castle set piece, it reminds you of that one bit where you have the cutscene of Joryu going down to the bottom, and then you have like him in front
Mhm.
of the guys.
Mhm.
There's a lot of that. There's just a lot of just interruptions, and whilst the other games have interruptions, they're a lot briefer about it. Like your enemies will get introduced and only be like a 2-3 second introduction, and then you just start fighting them. Because like it feels like a way for RGG to like, you know, get enemies into positions that they want for the fights themselves. And that's completely fine. But I think it's the length of those interruptions in between like all of these set pieces. Like I don't know why Gaiden has all of a sudden got me thinking about that. And for LAD, I wouldn't complain about that, because LAD being turn-based, there's going to be a delay from getting to one fight to the next, because you have to go into the fight.
Yeah.
But I started thinking about this with Gaiden, and then when I thought back on it, Judgment does the same, Lost Judgment does the same, like Six does the same, like they all do the same. So I don't know why it's Gaiden that suddenly made me start thinking about this. And it might be because of the Serpent Shoes. Because the Serpent Shoes you could just use to go like, you know, from fight to fight to fight, and it'd be good fun to do that. But you just can't, and except for one set piece. It's really weird. I don't know why it's Gaiden that's made me think like this.
No, I think I know exactly what you mean. Though I would say the first time that I noticed or thought about this, and I think actually I've seen quite a few people do that. Lost Judgment, I'm trying not to spoil stuff, but
yeah.
In Lost Judgment at the very end, you have a big segment. And after like every few fights, you're actually left to do a bit of parkour usually.
Yeah.
And it does feel like it breaks the pacing a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, you know, whereas with previous games, you're used to just, like you said, you finish one set of fight, and then maybe a little cutscene happens, and then you move on to the second fight, and so on and so forth, until you get to the end of it. But then, Lost Judgment, I don't know. I think I would say Lost Judgment did this first, if I had to, like, categorize it. And it was very noticeable with Lost Judgment for me, because, again, you finish, like, the first couple of fights. I think there's even a small cutscene between the first and second ones. But then after that, you're left to, like, look around the room, and, like, you have to find how exactly to proceed. And then once you find that, you have to climb up, and then you, like, it's definitely, it requires you to do more than an average long fight in a Yakuza game, you know, in the middle of the combat. And then, like you said, I noticed that in Gaiden as well, specifically in the castle, where you're kind of left to do exploration even, not just like, you know, it's like a segment where you have to like kind of do something. No, you're, God, how many ways do you have? Like 3, 4, 5? Like just completely different routes for you to go and like find items in. And I do wonder how much of an influence Yakuza 7 had in that. Like, I don't know how exactly it came about to be, but it is an interesting thing that I just, well, Froob and I noticed with these games.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I also, this isn't like finger-pointing blame, and this is not like us saying, you know, these set pieces are bad, because these set pieces are still very enjoyable.
Oh, yeah.
But I actually fully agree that I think there's something that LAD changed, like, theory-wise or like thinking-wise for RGG to do set pieces. Because with an easy one to describe, the Chapter 4 Seiryu Clan HQ set piece, there's so many different like small rooms, like you say, you can just go off and find items and stuff. And that seems to have definitely influenced stuff in Lost Judgment and Gaiden, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but the pacing has just gotten weird.
Yeah, definitely. Because, like, you know, coming off of the previous games, you finish one fight, get to another one, and pretty much that's like the whole cycle of the fight until you're completely done with it. If you had to kind of try and say, would you want them to change that specifically, or is it just something that you kind of thought about in the middle of the night while trying to sleep or something like that? I don't know.
Yeah, it's like, I don't necessarily want them to change it, because like with my example and with your example of those set pieces, I don't think they're bad set pieces. I just feel like they should cut down that, like, that, not fluff, but like the bits in between the fights. Like the cutscenes especially, I think, have gotten a lot longer.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
Again, the one with like the castle one where you fall down and like, you know, Joryu has like it's only 3 text boxes conversation, but it's still like, it's still like a good 20, 30 seconds of just like waiting from like that one cutscene to the next fight. When it should just be, you know, oh, there he is, fight. Like that's how it'd be in the older days. It'd just be, there's that guy, get him. Whereas now it's just like, you know, here's a mini expose, and then you just beat the fight really quickly. Like,
I think I just remember two different things. So I think I heard you talk about this actually on a stream once, and you mentioned the OG Yakuza 2 like finale with like the segmented fights. Now that example I think is more of a probably a hardware limitation where they had to kind of do that.
Yeah.
But then you have something similar as well in Yakuza 5, where in some long fights you'll have the protags like stop and talk, either to like each other or like one of the enemies, and like it's kind of interesting to see that technically this kind of thing did exist before, just kind of in different forms. Whereas now you like just stop for a whole segment, like you walk around and then you choose to continue the fight. But yeah, it's not a thing that I personally would say. Well, both Froob and I think it's not something that we think should be changed immediately or anything like that. It's just more of a thing that we thought about, and we kind of wanted to bring it up in a discussion, I guess, to see what people think about it as well.
Yeah, I'm very curious as to how other people feel as well.
Yeah. Right. I think we can move on to the next topic. So I was actually curious to see what you thought about this. Something that I noticed as the Dragon Engine games went on is how the combat's like core focus, it felt like it changed a little bit. It feels like you're kind of punished for not finishing a fight ASAP, whereas in pre-Dragon Engine games, I don't know how to put my words into this, but like you felt like you had a bit more freedom, and like because of how the combat was kind of designed around, I think, single target focused combat, if I had to put it in words, it didn't feel like you had to like end fights immediately, or you know, things would have been bad. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree, and like I don't want to like take every conversation back to like a speedrunning side, but I actually think there is a very good parallel between like the speedrunning side and what you're saying, because like with the older engine games, there's a lot more focus on like utilizing what we're given, and also like using a lot of the combat stuff, like again gut punches in OG2, in 3, and like obviously using everyone's different like abilities in like 5, for example. Whereas the newer Dragon Engine games and Judgment, Lost Judgment, and Gaiden are actually like really guilty of this. EX rules over all. Like just your EX mode is just, you have, and Lost Judgment is such a good example of this, where Lost Judgment, when you go into your EX mode, even with like Crane, like your attacks have like massive AoE, even behind Yagami.
Yes.
And like you can just deal with everybody with like EX mode that way. And I think you're right, and it's something that I thought like casually myself before, in the Dragon Engine is really good for multi-enemy combat.
Yes.
Like, it's not to say it's not good for single enemy, but I do prefer single enemy combat in the older engine. And
yes.
I think you're right, and I think it's partly one, more enemies in the fight in Dragon Engine games. Like Gaiden has so many enemies, which again you can just deal with Firefly like so simply. And then 2, like even though there were still a lot of enemies that crowded you like in the older engine games, unless obviously you had the charismatic photo on, like they wouldn't always like go after you or be quite aggressive. Whereas in the Dragon Engine, it feels like more of them like behind you and to the side will be a bit more aggressive and just go after you.
Yes.
So I fully agree with that.
It's funny that you mentioned Yagami's EX boost, because it kind of made me think of I forgot the name of it, but Kiryu's rage ability basically in 5.
Yeah, the Dragon Heat.
The Dragon Heat, thank you. It feels like a very, very limited version of that, because, so, I don't know what you think about it, but it feels like you're given a few things you can do with the Dragon Heat mechanic for Kiryu in 5, but it doesn't always work. Like, sometimes, I think enemies can just fully block the combo you can do in Dragon Heat, So the only option really would be to just grab them, because that breaks through
Yep.
every block, which is kind of interesting.
Yep. That is unironically a strat in Kiryu's part, is when you get to the Morinaga Aizawa fight, we want to take care of obviously both of them. We start by using Dragon Heat on Morinaga when he punches us, because when he punches you when you're going into Dragon Heat, he flinches, which allows you to completely attack him. If you don't do that, as you said, he just completely guards. Whereas again, in like Lost Judgment, if you just go into EX, it just breaks through everything. Like,
yeah. So, would you say, like, designing some mechanics around very specific uses would be good design for a casual player? Maybe it's a big question.
Yeah, it's hard to say, because again, I don't dislike the EX modes that are in Judgment and Lost Judgment. And I think they're necessary with how the game's combats have gone. So I don't necessarily think it's a bad idea. But then I am somebody that quite likes Judgment's mortal wound system, so maybe my opinion is not great.
I'm actually surprised. God, it feels like there's so many things I want to talk about right now. So the mortal wound system, I was kind of surprised to see that people didn't, or like hated it, because it is annoying. But I think that's the point. Like, you have to be super careful around these hits. And I don't know, like, if you just stacked up on the first 8 hits at some point in your playthrough, like, you would be fine. I don't know.
Yeah.
Didn't mind it. I thought it was an interesting mechanic.
It leads to one of the scariest speedruns. Judgment Legend any percent is terrifying, because we don't obviously prioritize HP, but we have to get HP in that version. And literally, when we get to like the end of the run, you get one shot by every mortal wound attack. So at that point, it's just like, is there a point to it? Like, should it be like toned down? Like, I like the system. I think that they could have expanded on it, or maybe like not made it as nasty, or like even have like, you know, the counter reversal in Lost Judgment and keep the mortal wound system. I think that would be a good, you know, a good way of like balancing that out. But I'm kind of upset they didn't bring it back. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was them trying to do something new, and I always appreciate that. Even if a mechanic doesn't work out the best, I appreciate them trying to experiment. I was gonna say it's a big shame they didn't bring it back, but I do wonder how you could have like developed or evolved the whole mortal wound system. Going back a little bit, I just remembered something. So you know how I was talking about very specific combat design that would require you to do specific things to get the most out of something? That actually makes me think of Yakuza 3. Yakuza 3 is always like a hot topic, because when it comes to, you know, just enemies blocking, Yakuza, when it comes to that, sometimes I see people saying, for example, like just grab or just use a tiger drop or what have you. I feel like Yakuza 3 in particular, the solutions to some things are very specific compared to other games. Because, like, you would have to resort to stuff like whiffing attacks, for example, which I feel like you don't do that as much in other games. But I don't know, that's just me.
No, I fully agree with that. Like, Yakuza 3, unironically, almost feels like it wants you to play a bit more patiently. Like, it almost feels like it wants you to wait for the enemy to attack, and then you deal with that. So,
which is funny, because that's kind of close to turn-based combat in, like, ideology.
Yeah.
There was something else I wanted to talk about. RGG sometimes drops amazing design choices. One of my favorite things is the shortcut system in Judgment. I love that so much. It really... I'm assuming it saves you time in the speedruns as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's how we get drunk quick.
Yeah, like, I love this system. I think it's one of the best quality of life stuff they ever added. So, seeing them shrink that down to one slot in Lost Judgment really confused me. And then seeing them not use it for Gaiden, like, I kind of understood, because it's not a Yagami game, but at the same time, they could have tried to implement that in Gaiden. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just such a shame seeing them not really try to include that in Gaiden, because I think it's one of their best additions, period. Just, you know, in a lot of my videos, there's so many times where I pause, go into the menu, use a heal, go back, get injured, go back, use a heal, and so on and so forth. So just, I really appreciate the system, and I really don't know why they didn't work on it more with the subsequent games.
No, I fully agree, and like the thing that kind of like really surprises me about them like swapping it down to just one item was just they didn't use the D-pad for anything else.
Yes.
Like if you're not using it when you did have a very, very good use for it from the previous game, why have you cut it down like this? Style swapping is still on down D-pad, and it's still, you know, it still goes through them in sequential order. Like it doesn't change anything. Like what, and I really like that. And like I'm gonna go to a bit of an obscure here with OG 1 and 2 for the Wii U, where with the Wii U gamepad, you'd think, you know, you could have item shortcuts and that on like the Wii U trackpad. The only thing they had was the map. Like they had such a good opportunity there, for example, to like actually have some good utilization for that.
Yeah.
But they just didn't. Like, can't believe I mentioned OG 1 and 2 for the Wii U.
I know, right? Man. You know, I always wanted to buy a copy of that just to like have it, because I feel like, I don't know, some things feel very cool to own, and that's one of them.
Yeah. And that is a super rare one, considering it didn't do too great on launch.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of game design, we talked about, you know, just the item shortcuts just now. So what would you say are some of your favorite game design choices, just in general, anything?
Again, I would fully agree with Judgment's item shortcuts. I think those are absolutely fantastic. The quality of life stuff that they've chosen, like, over, like, the series. Unlimited sprint. I know that's, like, a small thing. Unlimited sprint. I love that. And also the ability to not have to hold the button to sprint as well. That's so nice.
Yes.
And it's a little early, so I can't exactly go off on a massive tangent about it yet. But just the ability to move in infinite wealth at the start of your turn.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. That is everything that I wanted from a sequel to LAD. It adds so much technical depth, and the way that they've added it, like after like what we played with the demo of Infinite Wealth, is way better in implementation than I ever expected. The ability to as well for like now every character can pick up weapons to use from the side of the streets, and you can guarantee pick them up without Dragon Engine shenanigans happening, because they happen all the time in LAD.
Yes.
Like it's just such a good change.
I imagine for you, like, it's doubly awesome because, like, again, because of the speedruns. Because you said earlier that you were talking about the Sawashiro fight and how positioning was super important. I can only imagine how much more helpful this is going to be for the speedruns.
Anyone and everyone who has played LAD, you have at some point had a fight go wrong. You've been stuck on a corner, or, you know, your character has decided to run halfway across the city, and you've missed your attack. Like, just even being able to move your character just 3 centimeters to the right so that they get past that corner is such a nice change.
It really is, And the combo attacks. I love them.
Yes.
I love them so much. There was
more uses for normal attacks, because like in the speedrun, all we do is Tenacious Fist for the first 3 chapters, and then we just use Tag Team. Having like the extra damage from 1, combo attacks, and 2, environmental stuff, because that was one of those things that was so clever about LAD. You obviously don't have any control over it, but that rare time you attack an enemy into like glass, a neon sign, or a bush to like do bleed or paralysis and extra damage, having a way to like get that and to be able to do that yourself is so nice. Like, such a good change.
Man, you know, I was really afraid that they wouldn't. Well, I mean, I think that's the pessimist speaking in me, but I was kind of afraid they wouldn't maybe do like too much with quality of life stuff with 8. But I think they knocked it out of the park. Like, they did so much. It's more than I can even ask for. I'm just
even the small things. And again, in terms of favorite design, like game design choices, again, it's coming from a speedrun place, but also very casual. Fast travel anywhere. But in Infinite Wealth, you can now select taxis on the map. You can get information about the shops on the map, including the completion stuff. Which, is someone that loves doing the completion in these games, I love that. That's so good.
I didn't notice that, but that is awesome. Yes.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Just anything quality of life really with these games really goes a long way. Because again, you have people who go for completion in these games, and people who go out of their way to do everything in a game could really use stuff like that to make the experience more pleasant. And I just really appreciate that Yakuza 8 is doing so many things in that regard.
Yeah. And I think on like a small tangent, I think that's one of the reasons why most people didn't vibe with Ladishin was because it was pretty much a 10-year-old game. I love the fact that Ladishin has so many great accessibility options in the game. That was such a plus. But in terms of like game design stuff, you are playing a game that came out the 5.0 era, and we've had so many different quality of life stuff like that's just happened in the series since then that like a lot of people just might not have vibed with it because of that. Like it might have felt a bit archaic because of that.
Yeah, Light Edition is in such a weird spot because it's definitely not close to my favorites, but at the same time, it's a release that I really appreciate purely because, as Yakuza fans, everyone's been wanting that game for, almost a decade now. And just like being able to play that, even if it's a different experience technically, I think is huge on its own. But
yeah, and like I don't want it to seem like I'm just like harping on and like being negative towards Ladishin because I really like it, and I'm so happy they did bring it over. And I'm happy they made the effort to like put it into Unreal Engine, like change some of the actors. I think some of those actor changes are actually very good.
Yes.
But I feel like they didn't go all the way that they should have with the quality of life stuff.
No, I definitely agree with that. No, if you wanna do a negative talk with the Yakuza games, I'm here for it. Because again, I think I appreciate Ishin as a release, but it's definitely far from perfect. But I mean, then again, I think pretty much every single Yakuza game has something that you probably would really not like.
Yeah, agreed.
Right, so moving on from favorite game design aspects, what would be your least favorite design choices or combat aspects in general?
Funnily enough, I think this goes back a little bit to what we were saying earlier. I think an over-reliance on certain moves, like certain, like, as you're saying, like a Dragon Engine, certain, like, crowd clearing moves, like, yeah, we could just, like, not use that. But, like, when there's so many enemies in, say, Gaiden, you kind of gotta use Firefly a couple of times, especially on, like, the harder difficulties, which... it's not a combat aspect. I will say I'm a little disappointed there's no legend difficulty in Gaiden. But in terms of, I think the way of dealing with enemies, I think they've gotten a little over reliant on. I think certain enemies are also really, I think enemy variety has gotten not worse since the older games, but like different. For example, in like the older engine for say like Yakuza 0, K1, etc. When the larger enemies turned up with their drop kicks that are really annoying, you'd know that they would have hyper armor.
Yes.
When enemies aggroed in like Yakuza 0, sometimes they'd get hyper armor as well. But it just feels like everyone has hyper armor now. Like, it feels like everyone has a way to be annoying. Like, it's kind of the same with like Fist of the North Star in that regards.
Yeah, no, I see what you mean. I definitely do see people as well, like on my end, on comments or chat, talk about the hyper armor thing, and it's the kind of thing that I've been thinking quite a bit about recently. That I've been thinking of making a whole video about, but I'm still not sure about that because there is a lot to talk about with the hyper armor, but I don't know where to take it really. Like, what would be the bottom line of it? Get rid of hyper armor?
Which I don't think would be... I don't think that would be the right answer, because then you just steamroll everything. Yeah. But I also think in terms of like least favorite combat aspects, something similar is like your attacks flinching. I think it's gotten a lot better since, but early judgment with your attack flinching is just, it doesn't feel nice.
Oh, it really doesn't, yeah.
Yeah, it's weird.
It is. Some games definitely do have the hyper armor issue more than others. Wink wink, Ladishin. And, I think in some games it is more noticeable than others, but there is a conversation that I see about hyper armor where sometimes I see one game exclusively get all of the blame for hyper armor, but I would say like at least most Yakuza games do at least have one kind of annoying hyper armor enemy. And I get the argument of, it's an issue of this game could have prevented this many like hyper armor instances, and yeah, I do agree with that. But personally speaking, one of my least favorite hyper armor situations is Final Ryuji in OG2. I hate it so much. I hate it.
Yup.
Does
that fight is terrifying.
Does it screw you over in the speedrun, or?
Yes. So
Okay.
okay, I don't know. I don't think this is the strat anymore. But when it was actually unironically this time last year. For this quick reference, for those who don't know, OG2 runs take forever to get like actually going. Hyper armor in that game can suck. Daigo at the very start of the game sucks. With OG2, the way that we need to do the speedrun, the only way to go like super fast if you're going for a top time, you have to get a weapon, specifically the brass knuckles. The way to get that weapon is from a random fight spawn on Tenkaichi after like the tutorial on Nakamichi Street. That fight spawn has a random chance turning up, and the drop rate for the brass knuckles is a 1 in 6 chance. So I've literally had days where trying to get an OG2 run going. I think my record is about 27 attempts, which took about 3 hours. And it's wild. Like,
oh my god.
And those brass knuckles help you with Daigo, because you can get him like stun locked and then not having to do hyper armor. But OG2 Ryuji, it's one of the hardest fights in any like speedrun that we do, because unironically what we do is we should have one Patriarch bat left over at that point that we just throw towards Ryuji, and if you get lucky, Ryuji will pick up that bat, and for some reason, even though he has attacks with that bat, he just stands there. Like, it's really weird. And then the other times what we have to do is we have to time our gut punches perfectly to almost the frame, because the animation of doing the gut punch gives you iframes, weirdly, like at a perfect point. And we have to do that to go through Ryuji's attacks. Like, it's so horrible. The timing is so precise. It's like ridiculous.
Between like the hyper armor, and there's also another thing with the older games as well, 1 and 2 in particular, where the amount of iframes the enemies have, oh my goodness.
Yep.
And it depends from one moveset to another as well. Like, God, that one, I don't know, the kickboxing moveset with like their fist and like
G Promok.
I hate them. I hate them so much. I hate them.
I feel like this is like an extension of just the Colosseums in OG 1 and 2, where they're just horrible. Like, they're scary.
They are.
Especially when you get there in like the actual, like, casually, like the story-wise. Like, Gary is a real force to be reckoned with in OG 1 and OG 2.
Like, I really love the original 1 and 2. 1 more so. It's a game that, I mean, it's as old as it gets. People might have problems with it, but I personally love it. I think the gameplay of that game is something that I really don't mind going through again and again. It's just something, that I grew up with and I really love playing to this day. But yeah, you definitely do have some stuff about it that are annoying. But, that's like every game.
Yeah, like, I started with OG1 on the PS2, and I think that because of that, I have a lot higher tolerance for some of the things that obviously, like, the earlier games, like, ask of you. I don't know if that's, like, the same for you. But it's like with any game. Like, no game is free from criticism.
Yeah.
And while I would say, I adore, like, 0 and 5 as, like, 2 of my absolute favorites, I could absolutely throw criticism at them.
Yes,
0
absolutely.
not teaching you how to guard until Chapter 2 is wild. It teaches you how to quick step in the rush tutorial, but it doesn't teach you how to guard until the beast one in Chapter 2. What kind of design decision is that? That's wild.
I didn't even notice that. Wow.
It's so weird.
I think for me, it's because I just get into the I know how to play the game basically, and I don't even look at the tutorial, so I never even noticed that. That's news to me. I just remembered one of my least favorite aspects in the whole franchise, and I'm thankful that I did, because it's something that I'm very passionate about, and I want to talk about now. The Yakuza 2 training in particular. I hate it. I hate it so much. And I don't know where
actually
to start.
managed to forget it until you just mentioned it.
Like, it's not a Yakuza 2 issue in particular, but it feels like it started with the original 2. But then some of the games adapted that kind of training system. But thankfully, not too many games. So you could argue the First Judgment kind of has something like that with the drones, but not really. Even then, you have to actually go around the city trying to find all of these different moves. But thankfully, the good thing about Judgment is that I think they're all in fixed spots, right? So you don't have to worry about RNG or like as soon as you want to get the moves, you know where to get them from. But then you have Yakuza 2, where I ranted about this in my previous podcast with Gokidoni, and I'll do it again because I have the chance. Just, oh my goodness. The fact that you have to... I don't know if I want to talk about this. I don't know if I want to talk... I hate it so much.
We're here for you.
Thank you for understanding. Have a good day.
No, I get that. I fully get that.
Just... Like, you know, I get that they wanted to give you stuff to do. And, like, they wanted to give you a reason to maybe explore the city and talk to all of these NPCs, maybe, and just, you know, have you interact with all the different kinds of stuff. But, I don't know. It's just... I feel like it goes into Lost Paradise TDM territory, if not worse than that. So, something I didn't like about Yakuza 5, actually. The way you have to unlock the Colosseum compared to other games.
Yeah.
Victory Road. It's such a strange design choice to me. Like, in literally every single game with the arena, you progress a certain point, and after you get to that point, usually it's like an arena fight, it's going to be unlocked for you. You can go back, you can participate in the arena however many times you want, and, you know, just get the best rewards or whatever out of it. But then in Yakuza 5, you have to spend hours trying to unlock the arena for each character as well. And I really don't know why they did that. I think they probably wanted to give you a reason to follow the storyline of the Victory Road, but I don't know. I didn't really enjoy it.
I hate it. I hate it a lot. Like, on that, like, on like a more positive aspect, I think that Gaiden's like castle stuff that's like the Colosseum, I think that's some of the best iteration of it in the series.
Agreed.
But yeah, I think the other issue that I have with Yakuza 5 with the Victory Road stuff, it adds more fight spawns. And that's the worst thing. Yakuza 5's fight spawns are terrible. They are awful. Do not get me started about Victory Road in the speedrun. I'll be here for hours. But just having the whole, you know, you have to go and like fight these guys specifically to start to unlock the Colosseum. And then, as you say, everybody has to do it, and everybody's Colosseum has to be grinded up separately. Like, it's kind of like a good, like, it's kind of like a good synopsis of how 5 has so much in terms of like game design choice, but it's just, there's sometimes too much. And like 5 has like probably like the most content, or like at least obviously always up there in terms of all the content. And just, why is the Colosseum like an extra like 15 to 20 hour thing? Like, why is it that long? Like, it should just be like every other Yakuza game where you go to like Kamurocho and you unlock it. And I guess it's just the game's way of being like, hey, there's this Colosseum that's coming up and you can do it. But having to do the multiple fights beforehand is so weird. And the worst aspect, I hate this so much. Even if you don't interact with it, when you get to the finale with Kiryu, because this kills runs, if you get to the finale with Kiryu, Raiden from the Colosseum can just fucking waltz up to you on Tenkaichi. Apologize for my language. I hate him. I hate him so much. It's awful.
No, I think I know exactly which encounter you mean. You mentioned that every single character has to progress through the tournament separately. So, like, if you progress with Kiryu, it doesn't unlock the tournaments for Shinada, for example. I completely forgot about that, so thank you for reminding me of another reason to hate Victory Road.
And there are definitely characters that feel nicer in the Colosseum, Kiryu and Saejima, than others. Shinada.
the others, just in their own category. Man. In contrast, I'm actually curious. This is a bit of a shift in topic, but not really. Since it seems like we're maybe dunking on older games because Gaiden is good, or maybe, I don't know. What do you think Gaiden's Coliseum didn't do so well?
I don't think there was enough content in it, unironically enough.
Mm.
Like, I really liked it. I think that there's some very clever ideas in there.
Yes.
Without going into spoilers, the very last fight that you unlock is, oh, I love that. I love
Ooh,
that to
yes.
bits.
Yes,
But
yes, yes.
I would have liked more things kind of like that in the build-up. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if there's one thing that like I really like about the older Colosseum stuff, despite obviously like the whole like Victory Road stuff,
Mm-hmm.
all of the different tournaments like feel sufficiently different. One of the easiest ones to remember is the weapon-based stuff. Like you have your Colosseum stuff that have just weapons around the arena. There's not really anything like that in Gaiden. Like it's just you and fight the enemies.
Mm-hmm.
And like I really like the fact that you get the gold matches of like the Mr. Try and Hit Me's are there. That's cool. You get like the ones where you put the money down. That's a very easy way to get money. I like that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But apart from that, there's not that much else that's like super unique. I do like the team battle stuff. I think it's a bit too chaotic at times, and the latter like missions for that also get really hard. I think that they're really nasty if you're like controlling certain characters, but just allowing you to be able to lose any of the characters, it's just really nice as well. Like,
yeah, there was something specific with the Gaiden Arena. Actually don't remember how to trigger it. I think they did, like, it was such a weird implementation. You did have like weapon tournaments, but I think they were limited. If you, I think you probably did them. So there was
I
like
must have been just forgotten.
there was a Tonfa tournament where the Tonfa shoots like laser beams or something like that.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Because I remember like thinking, hey, this is just like that time you do it in VR Mario Party in Judgment and Lost Judgment. Which again, I think that like VR Mario Party, I call it VR Mario Party in the speedrun. I'm sorry, but the Paradise VR stuff in Judgment and Lost Judgment, just that feels like it has a bit more unique stuff because like the different weapons and stuff like that. Like I'm surprised that it couldn't take like more of that stuff over to Gaiden.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, should we chalk this up to the fact that they tried to develop all of this in 6 months? I mean, you could argue, they should have taken their time with the game, but I don't know. I don't know.
There's definitely stuff in Gaiden that makes me worried they crunched because, like, I think a lot of people have probably seen as well. Like, there's been like weird little things in terms of like localization menus. Like some of the skills on release, the descriptions were a bit off. And like weird little things like like non-capitalization of certain like words and stuff. And again, that's not meant as a dig at like the localization or anything. It's just it goes towards the whole 6 months of development where maybe they probably did need like more time. Like I think they definitely needed more time. And I love Gaiden to bits, and I really like Gaiden's like localization as well. But like it definitely feels like at some point they were told get it out the door. I'd love more like stuff in the castle, like not in terms of, like the like casino games and stuff, because I think they're obviously the usual, but in terms of, like the castles like Colosseum and stuff, yeah, I'd like more stuff with that. Like I'd like if RGG bring back Colosseums in the future, ideally something similar for 8 instead of like the battle tower. Go towards what Gaiden has done, more like that. Although I did like the battle tower in 7.
Yeah, same. I think, as excited as everyone is for Infinite Wealth, I think it really wouldn't have been that bad if they, for example, delayed that by a few months to work on Gaiden a little more. And if it meant stuff like, getting more variety in the Gaiden arena, or maybe just, I don't know, New Game Plus, I'm still sad about that.
Yeah.
I'm really hoping they're gonna announce that at the RGG Roundup soon, which I'm planning to watch that on stream, and I think by the time this video comes out, it's gonna be way in the past. But yeah, I don't know.
That's again, it's like the whole legend thing of it's so weird in that like, yeah, maybe we are taking for granted things that we've always had with every single game, but it's like we've had it with every single game, and like LED does it differently, not necessarily in a good way, obviously.
Yes,
but it's still something that we've always had, and to lose that aspect on a game that's already, shorter than the rest of them, which
Mhm.
again is not a bad thing. But in a game that's already shorter than the rest of them, there shouldn't be any problems of just having New Game Plus. Like,
Mhm.
what's the issue? Being overpowered? Because you can always be overpowered with New Game Plus in most Yakuza games. Like,
Yes, yes. This is a
I don't see a
conversation.
good reason. Yeah.
Like, thankfully, I don't see this being said much, but I feel like there's this kind of conception or idea that a game has to be a certain length for it to warrant New Game Plus, and I really don't agree with that because,
Yeah.
I mean, who gets to decide that? You know what I mean? If
It- uh,
games like Resident Evil 4, for example, remake, can have New Game Plus, I think Gaiden definitely does could use a New Game Plus.
unironically enough, it's from this conversation that I just had a thought. I wonder if this is a game design thing left over from Kaito Files, because Kaito Files didn't have New Game Plus, which again, Kaito Files is shorter,
Hmm.
but Kaito Files, and this goes back to a little bit of the conversation we had before with the Yakuza 2 like training stuff. Kaito Files asks you to do different things to unlock its moves. You obviously, as you were
Yes.
saying, they're all in like fixed locations, but
Hmm.
some moves require you to finish enemies with like, certain ways. Like one
Hmm.
of the upgrades requires you to do aerial supremacy, which is to finish an enemy in the air.
Yeah.
You can get like, Gori Gori finisher from the Matsukane family office to help you with launches for Kaito, for example.
Hmm.
And it's like a New Game Plus would bypass all of that completely. And
Yes.
unironically, like a New Game Plus for Kaito, you wouldn't be that overpowered either.
Hmm.
So it's weird. Like I wonder whether whether it's just a design thing left over from Kaito Files or not,
It's
which isn't an
possible.
excuse, but
Yeah, it's possible,
I
definitely.
feel like like with the counters that Gaiden has, there's a lot that they have taken over from Lost Judgment.
Mm-hmm.
So
Uh, when it comes to the Kaito files as well, like you said, the you kind of need to go out of your way a little bit to unlock some of the moves. And having a New Game Plus to where, if you want to revisit the game or the expansion, you wouldn't have to do all of that all over again. Like, for example, me and you, we stream these games sometimes. I like to do a marathon sometimes, or like, just revisit games from time to time. And I really like using New Game Plus. I mean, it depends on the game. Sometimes you do New Game Plus, and you're a bit more overpowered than you would like to be. So I just start on a fresh new game. But then with the Kaito files, I think that really would have benefited from New Game Plus. And also Premium Adventure, actually, because...
yes.
Or... Okay, Premium Adventure might be debatable, because it didn't have that much content. But, I don't know. Just...
There is still one side thing that you can unlock in Kaito Files. Like,
Mhm.
and the game tells you, hey, if you want to do this, you better do it now.
Yeah.
Before you end the game. But it still would be nice to, like, do activities as Kaito, That's
It
like one
just-
of the big things about Premium Adventure.
Yeah. It just also feels like a big shame that they allowed you to swap costumes in the Kaito files, but like there's nothing to really kind of work with the costumes. I don't know. Like it felt
Yeah.
like a missed opportunity.
It felt like one step forward and two steps back in that, like, Yagami has so many different costumes. It'd be cool to just
Yes.
walk around as a vampire.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
it's just kind of nice that Kaito allows you to do that. But there's no reason to do that. And the
Exactly,
upgrade to get
yes.
that as well is super expensive. Like, well,
Yes.
not like amazingly expensive, but it is expensive. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Just very odd kind of design choice. So I think I wanted to talk about... Right, so this is more of a community topic, but something that kind of irks me with discussions about the games is, like, sometimes you get topics brought up about specific games that, a game is bad because so-and-so, but...
Yakuza free.
Yes!
Yeah.
And the same conversation doesn't bring up the annoyances of other games that, they also have annoyances. So, for example, Yakuza 3, most common example. Oh, enemies block too much. Okay. What about Kiwami 2, for example, where the attacks bounce off all the freaking time? Like, it's just... Honestly, I don't know why I wrote this here. Maybe it's just because I kind of wanted to try and tell people that if you want to talk about this topic, it really would go a long way if you could also acknowledge that other games that you might love also do have their own problems. Because there's this kind of mentality. I mean, this is a thing in probably every fandom, probably. But, you know, you do have this kind of mentality where, oh, my game is better, your game sucks. Which is always unfortunate to see, but, you know, with the videos like this, we aim to kind of have discussions, like, without really just completely bashing the other's opinion. And, you know, I love all Yakuza games. I mean, I think my channel should say that. But I do also acknowledge that even my favorite Yakuza games do have problems. I love Gaiden, for example. That's probably a very recent example, but it does work. I love Gaiden. I love the arena in Gaiden, but I do definitely think it does have issues there. I love Yakuza Like a Dragon. I think that also has a lot of issues, which, thankfully, a lot of them are being fixed in Infinite Wealth. And what else do we have? Yakuza 0. I mean, Yakuza 0 is an example that arguably is the most perfect, but I do think even then, there are some moves that might be useless, some moves that could use a bit more fine-tuning. You know, it just... I could keep going, but I think the idea gets across. Do you have to deal with this sometimes in your community, or...?
Yes. Yes, a lot. And again, it's not like a slight against the community or anything.
Oh, yeah.
I think that as the games are getting more popular and more people are playing them, like, I think a lot of people feed into the negativity. One of the things that I really like about Gaiden is how it justifies Yakuza 3. Because so many people, like, skip Yakuza 3 or, like, talk bad about Yakuza 3.
Oh,
and
yes.
Gaiden has, like, so many, like, nice links to it. But the thing is, the thing that I hate the most, the thing I really hate, lots of people seem at the minute, or like over the past couple of years, they keep calling Yakuza 6 lazy. And I don't know why. And like, yes, there are features that are missing, and that sucks. And yes, like parts of the map are blocked off. It probably comes back into the whole crunch thing, because I think we've both heard from interviews that, like, a lot where, you know, they brought on a lot of new programmers for the Dragon engine, and they were getting used to that, hence why they went back to the old engine for Fist of the North Star.
Yes.
But to call 6 lazy, I really hate that, because 6 has a lot of set pieces, a lot more set pieces than most Yakuza games. And they really, like, you can absolutely not like the direction that 6's story went. You can say, you know, it wasn't a good, you know, ending for Kiryu because, you know, it didn't have that many ties to previous Yakuza games. Completely valid. But to call the game lazy, I don't like that. It's not a lazy game at all. And it's the same with, like, Blockuza 3. Like, yeah, like, the enemies do block a lot. It's an undeniable fact. But it's also a lot of people just not wanting to, like, put that much time into it. And it is weird, again, because, like, when people come into the series, again, it's kind of harsh to, like, talk about, because, you know, you go from... If people go with chronological order, you'll go from Yakuza 0, which most people agree is, like, one of the best gameplay-wise Yakuza games out there, to K1, which has its issues. Most people consider it, like, a expansion to 0, which is the easiest way to kind of digest that. And then you go to K2, which is, you know, Dragon Engine game. As you say, a lot of enemies start flinching at this point and stuff like that. But people still like it because it's got a lot of quality of life stuff. And then you have the issue of going from a more modern RGG game to the first mainline PS3 game. Obviously, the first one being Kenzan. But in terms of that, you are going from a game that has had 15 odd years of quality of life to a PS3 game.
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
It's a big difference. And like everyone is like entitled to like feeling that, you know, 3 is rough because 3 is rough. 3 is very rough. But I don't like the whole dogpiling of, you know, certain games in particular. Like, I think that this community, one of the things I do like about this community is that over the years, when people have gotten into Yakuza, all we keep saying is play Yakuza. Like, those of us that have been with the series for such a long time, we don't care how you do it. We don't care how you start. Consoles, PC, doesn't matter. Play Yakuza. That's the bottom line. Like, and it's just anyone, when everyone like shares their opinions of like which their favorite Yakuzas are, I feel like this is at least a community that listens. Like, even if they don't agree with it, it is a community that goes, "Oh, you really like Yakuza 4? Yeah, that's sick." Like, stuff like that.
Yeah. That actually reminds me of, well, God, there's 3 different things that I want to talk about now. So, first of all, you just mentioned about playing Yakuza and it doesn't matter which one you pick. Remember that thing with Gaiden on social media?
Oh, boy!
Oh, the comments. The comments. Oh my goodness. Hey guys, Gaiden is the perfect entry point. Everyone in the comments. No, it isn't. Like, I get the argument, I really do. But I really don't know how to say this. Like, starting with Gaiden is probably one of the most controversial entry points, but a lot of people started with games like Yakuza 5, Yakuza 3, 6, Yakuza, I don't know, just, any random game. And you could argue, oh, this is better than that entry point, that is better than this. But, I don't know, I feel like if you stick with the game, you're probably gonna check out the rest of the games. And, just, you could always argue again, like, this one might give you more context, this one is gonna, lead up to a better experience, blah, blah, blah. But ultimately, I do think that if someone enjoys what they played, whatever entry it is, they're gonna continue. But it is still funny. That whole social media post, that was a good laugh.
Yeah, I agree. And it's like, I think one of the good things about the series as to where it is, even though there's like, and I think everybody obviously would have their same bits of, oh, you shouldn't start with this or that. There are at least a lot of choices for where you want to start. Like, you want to start with, like, one of the more recent mainline games, and you don't want to do like the previous few games before, and you want a turn-based game, you can just start with LAD. It's a new protagonist.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
you can start with Zero, you could start with K1, you could start with OG1. Like, you could do.
Yeah,
like,
why not?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like, you could even start with 4, because 4
Mhm.
technically, you start Akiyama. Like,
Mhm.
4 was so brave when it came out. Like, your Kiryu that you usually play as all these games isn't until the end of the game. And, like,
Yes.
4 has, like, obviously very direct ties to Yakuza 1,
Mhm.
but it also does a very sufficient way of, like, actually saying, hey, this is the events of Yakuza 1, and this is why this is important to this relevant conversation. So
And
the games are very good at that.
I think even by the time you get to that point where it ties things to Yakuza 1, you already developed, well, how do I say this? You probably already, like, went through the first 3 characters that you maybe don't even pay that much mind by the time you get to it. You're probably like, oh, does this have to do with the first game? Oh, that's cool. All right, back to the game. Like, I don't know. I feel like, again, just, you could argue there's more horrible entry points, but, I don't know. I don't know where I wanted to go with this.
It's kind of like, if someone has an interest in the series, like, if they're that interested, they'll go backwards.
Yeah.
Like, doing, like, we have to remember as well, even if you only do, like, either the OGs or the Kiwamis, like in place of one another, you still have 8 mainline games currently, numerous spin-offs, and a 9th mainline game coming in a month. Like, that's a lot to digest when these games are like 20 to 50-hour games. Like, if someone is interested in the series, honestly, it doesn't really matter where you start. If they're that interested, they will figure it out as they go. And yes, there's certain games that, have a bit more of a rougher start or have a bit more of a rougher plot because, they rely a bit on, like, the other games. But if they're that interested, they will, go and see the rest of the games.
Yeah, definitely. And I actually wanted to go back a little bit to when you talked about Yakuza 6. When it comes to Yakuza 6 in particular, I always do tell people that it's arguably the bravest game in the fact that it basically brought the most new assets in any Yakuza game ever. The jump from one engine to, Dragon Engine is a big leap. And you could argue again that maybe they could have done better because I think they were working on Kiwami 1 at that time. But I don't know. Just, I feel like now that Gaiden is out, more people can probably be satisfied with 6 story-wise.
Yes. Yeah, agreed.
It might leave things to be desired, gameplay-wise, but, at least we have that story satisfaction now. I think most of us do.
I want to say I fully agree with what you say about the engine leaps. I'm sure you were the same as me, like getting into the series with OG 1 and 2, and then seeing like the first footage of like Kenzan and Free of just, going from the isometric camera angles to full 3D.
Mm-hmm.
The fight's not going into a load screen to going into the fight to load screen back to the
Yes.
map of just directly into it. And just like
Yes.
going from the older engine to the Dragon engine was never going to evoke that feeling, but walking into a shop with no loading screen.
Oh,
When I saw
yes.
that, it was just, this is it. It's the same feeling.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I agree. I think 6 was very brave because of that.
I mean, the crazy thing is that it came a long way since 6 as well. Like, if you compare 6 to, like, I don't know, Lost Judgment now or Gaiden, it's just insane how many quality of life stuff they added since then. And,
RGG are very good at that.
Yeah, one of the biggest things I think you also appreciate is the taxi shortcuts. Just, being able to move around whenever you want at the click of a phone button is huge. I love
Free
it.
taxis in the OG games.
3 taxis, like, on the west, on the east, and in the south.
Yep. I do miss that Nakamichi taxi, I will say. RGG, please add that back.
Yeah. When did they add the Hotel District taxi? Was that in 3 or 4?
4. Which is the also weird thing, because, like, again, that's one of those, like strange design choices where we had the Hotel District for, like, multiple games, and then in Judgment 1, the Hotel District was obviously next to Monsieur Lee. So for some reason, the Hotel District taxi is not there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And it's there in K2, and then it's gone again for the rest of the series. Why did they remove that one? There's no taxi up there. You've got, again, as you were saying, the top left by, the batting center and stuff, and the top right by the park. Well, there's no taxi at the top anymore again. Why?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I don't know. Yeah, like, see, you have some strange design choices like this sometimes that, when we try to think about it just now, we didn't really, like, it didn't come to mind. Just because sometimes they're so random. Like, you think, okay, like, this was in the previous game, why is it not in this game? You know what I mean? I was actually curious to hear your thoughts about the inventory system now. So what do you think of... first of all, which one do you prefer? Pre-Dragon Engine or Dragon Engine?
Man, that's tough.
I'll say...
I think... Yeah, go on.
No, just a little thing. I feel like pre-Dragon Engine was definitely more challenging if you relied on heals. Because the Dragon Engine, you can just stock a whole shop in your inventory.
Yep.
Go on. What did you want to say?
I think that actually is a good lead up to how I feel, because Judgment does the thing where it puts your healing items to only 3, which again with the Mortal Wound system is very brave. You can obviously get the skill that ups that to 6, but it's still like, you still can't get that many healing items. But then you have the thank you Windows Defender summary, I appreciate you. You then have obviously all the food items that just stack. And like from the speedruns, as we know, like bentos are just really good. Like you just stack your inventory like with 10 bentos and then spam the D-pad shortcuts. I like the inventory in both the old engine and the Dragon engine. I do like that you can stack more stuff in the Dragon engine, but I do think it makes it so that it's a little on the easier side because you can do
Definitely,
that.
yes.
I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, like casually, but it definitely makes it a lot easier. I don't like the 9 item limit in the OG games, but I do like that in the speedrun, we do actually mess with that. Like, we intentionally have to work around that. I do like the fact that in the newer engines, equipment is its own separate thing. Like, I didn't like equipment being in the same, like, 9 inventory or, like, 12 inventory of the original games. And I do like the fact that, like, with the speedruns for OG 1 and 2, especially OG2, we play around with that because you can only technically hold 3 weapons at a time, unless, as you'll know, you equip a weapon as well, and then you can have technically a 4th. So I do like the fact you can play around that with the older engine, but I do think that the, like, especially the OG 1 and 2 was very, very restrictive. So I kind of like the in between of like free to K1 of being, still relatively restrictive, but having 20 slots. You had to think about what you took. I kind of like that.
So, it sounds like you're on the same boat as me, where you don't really have a specific preference. It's just that you kind of take each one of these inventory systems for what they are, and you appreciate what they bring to the game. Would you say that? Okay.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah, I think that the OG games are very restrictive, which, considering they're a product of their time, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And it goes back to the whole quality of life thing in that having more inventory space, moving equipment out is much better for the player. Like, I do like that. But balancing is an interesting thing. It's kind of like, when I play these games casually, I try to not heal as much because these days I'm very aware I got like 50 bentos. And unless your name is Sawashiro, you're not stopping me.
Yeah. I did hear a conversation about this aspect of the Dragon Engine, like with the inventory, possibly taking away a lot of the challenge. But I feel like if you really want to challenge yourself, you can manage something. For example, don't use heals. Just don't use heals at all. And yeah, I really don't mind the whole inventory system in pre-Dragon Engine and also Dragon Engine.
Yeah, it's similar to like speedrun stuff. People come in and say to me, can you play these games normally anymore? Yeah. Like with K2, Muscle Soda is busted. Just don't buy Muscle Soda. Like we use a lot of weapons in K2. Just don't use weapons. Like it's very easy to change up the way you play. Like that's I think one of the benefits of all these games is you can play these games in any way you want. Like it's fantastic. Like
I think I would also rather have that where you have the freedom to do something, but if you don't want to do it, you have the choice. I would take that over just completely restricting you and preventing you from doing something that you might want to do in another one, for example.
Yes.
Right. Is there something else you want to bring up about the inventory system?
No, I'm good. That's pretty much it.
Right. All right. What about other gameplay topics? Would you say is there anything else you wanted to bring up?
Not particularly. I think we've covered pretty much everything that I wanted to say.
Right. So I think we can discuss the thing you told me about now, about the Sega Union employee layoff.
Yeah, so again, this is just something that it's going to be a little uncomfortable for a lot of people and a bit, oh God, talking about this kind of thing. But I feel like it's very, very important that, like, I'd like to try and use, like, my platform, and Devalian's being very nice enough to obviously let me use his platform to be able to, like, put this out there. But essentially back in April, Sega workers chose to unionize Sega of America. They unionized as the Allied Employees Guild Improving Sega. So, I guess. Kind of like, I guess from Persona, which is cute. They even had like a whole bunch of support from like a whole bunch of politicians, and including the mayor of Irvine, Farah N. Khan themselves. On the 15th of May, Sega attempted to delay their election agreement and did a whole bunch of union busting. On July 10th, they announced that they won their union election by 91 to 26, which actually made them the largest multi-department union of organized workers in the entire gaming industry, which is super cool. But unfortunately, Sega have continued their union busting stuff. Last month they had a meeting with the workers directly, which also goes against like the whole union stuff because they're not talking to like the union leaders, where they have threatened to outsource a lot of the jobs of the majority of their workforce in QA and localization. And like, I think it's up to about like 80 people. And like, the reason why I want to bring that up is that I think this is something that a lot of RGG fans can appreciate and like at least be educated about, because like we've gone from the days, like me and Develian, we've obviously been there since the beginning. We've had like the games have taken like, multiple years from the Japanese release to come out in English, and we've gotten to this really nice point where we're getting games day one. Like, and the localization of those games has still been, high quality, like really high quality. Something that people adore about this series is the localization. Like it adds to the experience, it makes the experience better. Ask Ketchum in Judgment, for example. Everyone loves stuff like that. Side stories have so much flair to them that, that adds an extra layer of like humor and just general niceness.
Mm-hmm.
And the issue with obviously Sega attempting to do this union busting is the fact that it is going to hit the quality assurance and especially the localization part. And like the localization of these games for me is so important to the experience
Mm-hmm.
because the localization of these games is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Like the whole, it's not just the content itself, but like, the whole like conversations and how they flow. And like Yakuza 0, for example, when that started getting big in the West because of, Nugget the chicken, it's it's that entire conversation of Kiryu in his head about chicken. Like just stuff like that. And like that's the reason why I wanted to bring it up, is like I didn't really have much to share other than just making awareness for it, because it's not a good thing that Sega is trying to union bust. And like genuinely I am in solidarity with the people that are, trying to form the union, because as they say, they just want good working conditions for employees at Sega. So
right, I'll be completely honest with you. First of all, thank you for talking about this, because if you were to leave this up to me, I actually wouldn't really know what to say. But to put it in very, very, very basic terms, this means that there's a lot of Sega employees at risk of getting fired, right? Basically.
Yes. Yeah, they're going to outsource their jobs to other like employees in other parts of like the company or out of the company.
Right. So that's the message that we're trying to convey here, people. Now, of course, there's nothing really I don't think he can do about it, is there?
No.
Right.
No, just awareness.
Yeah, it does help. It does help to know. Yeah. These games have come a long way in terms of localization and a lot of other things. But the localization, it reached a peak with Yakuza 0. And thankfully, ever since then, I think it's only been consistent and steady with how they deliver with their work. And just the possibility that might get affected, and that worst case scenario, I think this is a worst case scenario, that we might go back to waiting for releases is kind of scary. But if we can spread awareness about this, and if it does help, then I'm glad that it would. Yeah, I only wish the best for those employees. I really hope it doesn't come to the worst. And yeah, is there anything you want to add, Froob?
No, that's perfect.
Right. Well, to close things off on a light-hearted note, what do you think about a Kiwami 3, Froob?
Oh boy. This is gonna go back to the conversation we had about the community earlier. I'm about to drop something. You don't have to like every game. The thing is, a Kiwami 3 would not fix every issue that you have with Yakuza 3. This is like, this might be a more jokey question. I have a bit of a serious answer.
Go for it.
I have an issue with every single one of RGG's remakes, because they either add or they take away in unnecessary ways each time. K1 with the essence attacks again, and like just a couple of design decisions. I'm gonna say something controversial. I don't think Majima Everywhere is a great system. I think it's okay. I like it, but I think it's too much.
Agreed.
I would like at some point for you to be able to just turn it off. To just say, Majima, stop turning up. When he turns up in every single fight, way too much. Like, it makes me not want to interact with it. K2, like, it's a small thing. A little district called Sensation. If you've never played OG2, there's this very small district. If you play Persona 5 Strikers, it's actually in that game. There's not much there, but it's just this little thing that just adds a little bit of flavor, and it wasn't in any other RGG game. Also, taking out the park at the bottom right of Sotenboro, I was very upset at that, but I'm really surprised they actually added that back in for Gaiden. Again, going back to Gaiden's whole, it's a smaller game, and yet for some reason they worked on the map. Like they added the park back. I love that.
Yeah.
And it's the same with Yakuza 3. To bring it back to the actual question, you don't have to like Yakuza 3. The thing that people don't like, the blocking, yeah, that would get fixed in a Yakuza 3. But would the combat necessarily be better? For the most part, yes, it'd be very different. But the issue that most people also have with Yakuza 3, which is one of my favorite parts of Yakuza 3, people hate how the game progresses. Yakuza 3 has a pacing problem.
Yes.
You have 3 chapters, 3, 4, and 10, where you deal with 3 of the kids' problems each time.
Uh-huh.
Just remaking the game, and the way that they would do it with the Kiwami is they would not change that pacing whatsoever. So those issues that people still have with it would still be there in a Kiwami.
That is true, yeah.
I still feel like it'd be like Gladition. I feel like people would be happy that they, made the effort to try and quality of life stuff and improve it. But I don't think people would like it as much as you think you would. And I would much rather RGG focus on smaller experiences like Gaiden. Gaiden opens up the door to so many different side stuff. You could have a Majima Saijima action game. You could bring back characters like Akiyama, Tanamura, Shinada. You could do so much with Gaiden, whereas you are restricted with a Kiwami 3 to following what Yakuza 3 was. I think that with K1 and K2, 2 of the things that I dislike is how they stay too similar to the originals. And a Kiwami 3 would also be exactly the same. Sorry, that was a very serious answer.
no, I really appreciate that answer because, even though this is a meme question, because for context, for those who don't know, I've been on a Froob stream once, and there was a pinned message saying, "Don't ask me about Kiwami 3." Basically, I got
asked literally 5 times that night.
So that's the whole context behind it, and I sometimes get people asking me as well, and I mean, I think my answer is similar to Froob, honestly, to where I would much rather a Gaiden game at this point because they can do so much with that. That is basically unexplored territory. You could arguably bring back a beloved villain that way as well, like a Mine game, for example, a Ryuji game.
They want to do that.
yeah. I mean, I want to try not to spoil, but I think I have to. Let's just say they're trying to bring back so many characters from Yakuza 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is something that we didn't touch on. That is something that I do dislike about more modern games. Is not erasing what happened in the previous games, but it's starting to feel a bit cheap. With you remember this guy? Eh?
He's alive now.
Who wants to become a bartender?
God, unironically, despite everything that's going on with the resurrections, the whole bartender meme, I love that.
Yeah, that's good.
Now we just flat out say, okay, who's gonna open their next bar in Yakuza 9?
Yeah, I want the game after Infinite Wealth. I want to know who's opening another bar after that.
There was something else that you said before as well. A brave statement that you don't have to like every single Yakuza game. And I really respect that, because yeah, that is actually, I mean, it is true. You don't really have to like every single individual game, whether it's Yakuza or something else. Game companies or developers can try to perfect every single entry or game, but ultimately, if, for example, you love every single thing about every game, someone else out there won't love every single thing. So in the end, it doesn't really matter in that sense. Just, appreciate whatever you enjoy, and, just go on from there. And yeah, I think that's all that I have to say about this. Is there anything you want to add? Anything at all? I think we pretty much finished all the topics.
Yeah, that's pretty much everything that I wanna talk about.
Man,
at least within the constraints of today, because otherwise I know we could go on for hours talking about this stuff. But that just shows, and it's the same for everybody else. If stuff like this makes you start thinking towards obviously conversations about this stuff, that's the point. Everyone has their own opinions, and that's the nice thing about this series is there's a lot to think about and there's a lot to consider. And I think we can all agree it's a great series.
Yes, this happened with Gokudoni as well, where when I was sitting down to talk about just the games with him, we got to I think almost the 2-hour mark without really feeling the time, and we were kind of joking around about how we can really just go on and talk about a lot of different stuff, just as people who play this franchise a lot, and it made me kind of want to really make this kind of video a regular thing if possible. And like, you know, I really don't mind bringing you over again, or Gokidoni, or making like a combination episode with 3 of us, or, you know, what have you. A lot of people have been saying that, you know, they want to see more of this kind of stuff. And I just want to say, Froob, thank you so much for being here. It's been a blast talking about all of this. And I really appreciate that you took out of your time to join us today.
Look, more procrastinating on setting up this new PC. I'm all for it. But no, thank you very much for having me. I'd be down for joining again. And like, as an idea for like, you know, potential stuff like this, you could easily like. I think you're like. I've been very, very blessed to like. I've been thinking about this a lot with obviously the year end coming up. I've been exceedingly blessed to have had a chance to get to know you. I've actually really enjoyed your content for years. I think you are one of, if not the best, like Yakuza content creator out there. Genuinely, not just sucking up because I'm here. But like you could easily invite certain creators along to talk about like the game specifically. Like if you wanted to do like game specific like spoiler casts and stuff like that, like that'd be fantastic as well.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. And to kind of deflect, I also really do enjoy your content. I try to tune into your streams as much as I can, and it's always kind of an eye-opening experience to see someone who knows the ins and outs of these games, more so than I do, by the way, for those watching this. Because like when you speedrun these games, you like, I don't know where to start. Like the amount of things you have to know, like it's no small task. And
it's one of the reasons why I love LAD and hate LAD is because when things go wrong, which they regularly do because turn-based RNG, it's just you need that knowledge of, oh no, I'm about to get feared. What do I do?
Yeah, I can only imagine. And the one time that I did try to the closest thing that I did to a speedrun really was when I tried to finish 3 games in one stream about a month ago now, I think. And when I tried to do that, I had so many situations where I wanted to do something, but my brain kind of wandered off somewhere, and like either I get distracted by chat or I like think about something else, and then I realized, like for example, I'm going to a direction that I don't need to go to. So stuff like that just really makes me respect something like speedrunning. It's there's a lot that goes into it, and it's absolutely insane. I just want to, you know, tell you that all the stuff you do with the speedrunning is just very impressive.
I appreciate that. For going back to Yakuza 3's speedrun that we briefly talked about earlier, if you take a singular wrong taxi in the run is dead because you don't have enough money. And despite the fact that we buy 13 guns in the end game, you would think that these guns would just be just shoot like all the enemies. We have a specific setup for these guns, and it's the same with Yakuza 4. This is our finale for Yakuza 3. On the third set of 3 guns equipped, use 1 gun down to 14 and 1 gun down to 4. Don't bother with the shoddy pistol. Use 4 of the last 4 enemies of the low minions, reload that to 15, and finish should go down to 10. 14 on the 2 furniture blockers and the Hakko captain, it's now 0. 4 from the untouched gun in the elevator, now it's 11. 11 on Ricardson 2, it's now 0. 10 on the CI agents, it's now 0. Reload your last 3 guns before Ricardson 3. Use 15 down to 3 on Ricardson 3, both shoddy pistols, and make sure the throws hit him. That gets you down to 3 guns, that gets you into your last 2 guns, 3 of the rest of those guns, 8 down to 7 in the elevator, 7, 15, Mine, done. You need a math PhD for those guns at times. I have notes for that.
I think I lost track like a couple of seconds in, honestly. Oh my god.
So it goes back to like exactly like that, where some games very precise, and then Lost Judgment hit EX. Just sometimes you have to have gun math, and sometimes it's as simple as hit everybody.
I'm really glad that we had this chance to just talk about all the gameplay stuff. And again, I am more than down to do another podcast and just talk about different stuff at another instance. Just want to give a big thank you to everyone watching this, and the link to Froob's YouTube channel and the Twitch channel is going to be in the description. Please go give this man a follow. He streams almost daily, right?
Yeah, I should take Fridays off. I don't think I've taken a Friday off in 6 weeks.
Oh my goodness, dude, take time for yourself, please.
I could set that new PC up, or I could not.
Man, just God, it's. Thank you for being here. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you for having me. It's been nice. Like again, that's one of my positives of my year is being able to like work with other Yakuza content creators and just get to know them and also just talk about the series. Like speedrunning is a community thing, and it's also inherently quite a lonely thing at times because we are competing against one another, and like with like speedrunning stuff, we're so focused on certain aspects of it that it's just really nice to reconcile and be all like, no, those silly story moments in those Yakuza games, they're pretty good.
From what I've seen, by the way, when it comes to speedrunning, you guys really don't mind, like, how do I put this? You basically take a look at your each other's runs, and then you try to do some stuff the same way. That's fine, right? Like,
yes.
it's not looked down upon or anything.
Yeah, no. Speedrunning is like a very community-driven thing, and yeah, some people like don't share their strats until they do a run and stuff. But when the thing with like doing speedruns is if you're submitting them to like leaderboards or you're doing speedruns, at some point people are gonna see them. So there's no point in hiding anything because it's just people are gonna see it at some point anyway. And the nice thing about the Yakuza speedrun community is even though we've grown like exponentially, when we started out there was like 3 of us like 7 years ago. There's now like over like 300 of us. Like even though we have a lot of members, we're still a small community, and like if we have questions, you can just ask anybody else. Like we'll always have the time to just like help people like get into like runs or just the series. Like we had someone come in the other day, even though we're like obviously the speedrun like community, and just asked what's up with those levels in Yakuza 0 for the limit break stuff, because it's like the info out there, like it might be quite hard to find. Like we can help with mechanic based stuff as well. It's nice. Like it's very community focused like that. It's really good.
Yeah, that is good to know, because the world of speedrunning does seem scary, at least to me sometimes, and
it is being in it as well.
It is really reassuring to know that you guys have like a place to kind of get together and help others with that kind of stuff as well. But yeah, I learned a lot today, and it's all thanks to you being here. So again, I appreciate this. Thank you so much for being here, Froob. It's been a wonderful little conversation.